On today's show, the Cavs start 2024 0-1. We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit at the end about how the Knicks-Raptors trade affects the East standings. That's all on today's Locked On Cavs for Tuesday, January 2nd.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Welcome to 2024. Welcome to Locked On Cavs. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens, as always, for his work on production. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, we're going to go Cavs-Raptors big takeaway in segment 1. We're going to go game awards in segment 2. And then we're going to talk about the seeding standings, competitive enough the East impact from the Knicks-Raptors trade that we saw. If you want more on those trades, check out Locked On Raptors with Sean Woodley. Check out the Locked On Knicks guys if you want more on that trade. Locked On NBA as well. We have you covered on every angle here at Locked On. Cavs lose to the Raptors 124-101. Karis LeVert leads the Cavs in scoring. Donovan Mitchell chips in 3 other players with 16. Pascal Siakam, the high scorer in this game with 36. Evan, what is your big takeaway from Cavs-Raptors?
Defensively, this is just not a good performance for Cleveland whatsoever. You had noted this, but I agree with the sentiment. Giving up, oh my gosh, I don't know, almost 80 plus, 90 plus points through the first 3 quarters is just not an optimal strategy. I think coming out kind of flat and trying to go shot for shot with the Raptors, who aren't great this season. They are 12-20 on the year now, have a losing record at home, whereas Cleveland is technically above 500 and has a winning record on the road. Like, just wasn't good. But I think in this one, it's kind of been indicative of quite a few games lately for Cleveland. Max Strus just isn't giving them enough offensive juice just to kind of maybe counterbalance some of the lack of offensive firepower without Darius Garland, without Evan Mobley out there. I think, sure, you got a stellar performance from Karis LeVert off the bench. I think Sam Merrill really stepped up for the Cavs in this game, but like Strus just was not really able to get much going for the Cavs. And I had noticed this in the past, like even if his shot wasn't falling, he was making the extra play in terms of just playmaking, and that could be the hockey assist or a regular assist or crashing the glass and maybe giving Cleveland a second chance opportunity because of the offensive rebounds that he's able to kind of gin up. And I wonder if maybe the offensive rebounding is more of a product of playing with both Mobley and Allen, but who knows? But I've just noticed like Strus has been a little bit flat, and for a team like Cleveland, who is already struggling enough to find offensive consistency, you need more from guys like that.
I mean, I think part of it is he's not making shots. We'll get into the offensive rebounding thing because there's some stuff in there that I think does pop. I think for me it does just come down to the defense is just in a weird spot right now, and I think this is the way they do need to play to some degree. I mean, I don't even hate the fact. I kind of respect the fact that they go to the start of the fourth quarter when they're very much still in this game, or really till the end of it. They go Mitchell, Strus, Merrill, Niang, Tristan Thompson. That is space. That is Donovan Mitchell's got the ball in his hands. That is saying we know what we are right now. We understand what our personnel is. It's not very many good defenders. I mean, it's at best like 2 solid enough defenders, and Niang and Mitchell and Merrill are guys you can attack. And that's kind of just how you have to play right now. And the defense just isn't equipped. I mean, even in this run when I think they've won decently, they've had some good performances. The defense for Cleveland over this stretch hasn't been particularly good. That just makes sense to me based on the roster. They've had a couple good defensive games. In the Milwaukee game, it rated out actually okay. It rated out well against Dallas. It rated out well against Chicago. Then they've had some bad ones, and this one is going to fall more in line with the bad ones. But that, to me, makes a lot of sense with this roster. I think it's just you didn't have the gear more than anything else. I don't think this team right now is capable of wholehearted monster defensive performance. I don't think this team is capable of the peak. Without Evan Mobley, this team is not capable of the best defense it possibly can be, which is what led them to a ton of success last year. What they are capable of, you would hope, is just enough defensive stops here and there. And in this game, you couldn't do it. This game, it just wasn't really an option. And then there's some other stuff we can get into, but that's the core of this. The defense has its moments, but they weren't ultimately in this game, I think, able to get just enough stops, particularly early when they gave up 41 points the first quarter and never really dig themselves out of that hole permanently.
Do you think that's more of an understated appreciation of how valuable Evan Mobley is to this defense, or just maybe the Cavs are in a bit of a funk just because they are missing Garland and Mobley, maybe to kind of counterbalance things? But like you said, like it did gin out okay against Milwaukee, Dallas, Chicago, 2 wins and a loss for Cleveland on this recent stretch. But I do wonder if it does certainly crystallize the fact that the Cavs are missing their most important defender and arguably their most important player out there, while you're still getting pretty solid effort from Jared Allen. And I think Isaac Okoro has been huge in this stretch with all the Cavs being so banged up. But I want to pass it back to you. Like, do you think that's just more indicative of just the fact that the Cavs really do hope and pray that if they are the praying type, that Evan Mobley is back healthy and just isn't unavailable down the stretch of the season when he is back?
I mean, I think you can't play defense at the level they want to without Evan Mobley. They're 10th in defense on the year. It's not quite where it was last year, but when it was first, but it is 10th. It's gotten to a back above better than league average. But I think with no Mobley, and on top of the personnel changes you made going into the summer to skew more offensive heavy, I think that's where you end up where this unit is. I think that's certainly part of it. Mobley allows Jared Allen to protect the rim because he eats up so much space. He closes things off. He kind of denies easy rolls at times. That you just can't replace that. George Niang does not intimidate people. Dean Wade, when he plays, does not intimidate people. They don't have a single other defender on this roster, aside from Evan Mobley, who can be a deterrent in that way. So your whole defensive scheme now does just look different. That's not new, but it shows up in this game. One other thing I want to hit on from a takeaway from this game that I thought really cost them, just to play-wise, we won't get to it otherwise, so it's good to bring it up here, I think. I hated the Donovan Mitchell 3 with 18 seconds left.
It was questionable, sure.
So you have timeouts, B, you have time, and you took a rush three-pointer that you weren't even close to, and then you have to play the foul game the rest of the way. The strategy there, whether that was what was called for, we're not in Toronto, I haven't seen what they said post-game about it. I just thought that's about the worst outcome you could possibly get in that moment. You have the time, you've had all this fight to get back into the game, and that's the shot you get. That is, I think, disappointing process if you're looking at how they ultimately lose this game. You did all this work to get back in the game, and that's where you end up. To me, that's disappointing for Mitchell. That's disappointing from the Cavs.
Oh, it's first. I can understand the thought process just because, like you said, you fight all the way back into the game and you put the ball in the hands of your best player, your best offensive player overall. And you say, okay, Donovan, these are the moments we brought you in for because we need you to just go out and win this game for us. Like, yeah, I understand that thought process and maybe and that sentiment. But like you said, it's just a terrible shot just because it was so early into the shot clock. You still had a timeout left. Like, if you weren't quite getting what or you're hoping the defense is going to give you, you use that timeout to maybe readjust, redraw things and kind of figure out where things can kind of go from here. And it just felt a little rushed. It felt a little forced. And I agree. Like, it was just not a great way to manage things, especially when you fought all the way back into this game. And yeah, it just kind of like just a wet fart noise when you watch that shot go up and in and you're like, all right, this one's over. So yeah, it's just a waste of resources that you had available to you.
Ultimately, I think a frustrating loss for Cleveland. The only thing I will say in defense is, as far as energy bringing to a game goes, that Toronto just lost to the Pistons and ended that where the back end of that losing streak being over. And this was the debuts of Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. They were gonna have, I think, some really organic energy to A, make up for that last performance, and B, those new guys bring in. You always get a little bump. It's like the new coach bump. It's the new player bump. You get a little extra energy, and the Cavs just weren't sharp enough in any way to overcome that. All right, after this, let's go to Game Awards. That's MVP, Stat of the Night, Play of the Night. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up. Just 1 week left, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That is $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. So you could bet on Browns Bengals. You could look at Kevin Stefanski, Coach of the Year, Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year. They have Cavs stuff all over the place, including games this week against the Wizards twice and the Spurs. Could be some stuff there for that you could like. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in their new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and official sportsbook of Locked On. Again, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when you place a $5 bet. All right, game awards. Evan, I think LeVert's the MVP. I think considering for me that he had 31, he was 12 of 20 from the field, 5 of 5 from the line, 4 assists, 0 turnovers. Like his scoring at times bridged them in spots where Mitchell wasn't totally overwhelming, and he was a little more efficient overall. I just give the edge to him, and he also he didn't take the bad shot that we just talked about. So, Caris LeVert.
Yeah, the bad shot certainly helps Caris LeVert's case over Donovan Mitchell. I talked a little bit about Max Strus in the first segment. The Cavs would have been a much bigger gulf if I think Caris LeVert didn't step up the way he did. Ditto for Sam Merrill. I think Sam Merrill played very well in this game as well. At least just showing signs that the wrist injury was kind of just maybe it could be something worth keeping an eye on, but maybe not as big of a concern going forward.
Let me ask you this about Sam Merrill before you do MVP. Should he just play? Like, should you just give him a run even when you're a little more healthy just for the shooting? Like, he played ahead of like Dean Wade. Like, didn't see Dean Wade played 20 minutes. Didn't feel like he played a single lick. I felt Sam Merrill 16 minutes in this game by comparison. So when it comes to like Sam Merrill or Craig Porter Jr., who has been kind of a dude, like against the Bucks, as recent example, like the Cavs kind of clawed their way back into the game when Craig Porter Jr. just gave them a little bit of juice off the bench. I think whether it's him, Merrill, Dean Wade, just guys of that vein, like, yeah, you give them a little bit of run. If they have the hot hand, you run with it. And I think JB has shown a comfort and at least just trust factor when it comes to players and trusting the hot hand a little bit. And I think that has led to more opportunities, injuries too, for like Sam Merrill and CPJ as well. But like you said, like, yeah, you felt Sam Merrill's like impact minutes and scoring. And like, there was just moments where momentum kind of swang back into Cleveland's favor because Sam Merrill just hit one of those big, like, I want to say backbreaking, but at least tide shifting 3-pointers that they were just so desperately needing because Strus wasn't able to get it going. And like Mitchell, despite his high scoring numbers, wasn't like hyper efficient. But yeah, like the bench unit just stepped up big time for the Cavs when they kind of needed some type of spark because Pascal Siakam was lights out. Jakob Poeltl played well. Scotty Barnes was phenomenal in this game. Quickly, Schroeder, and then even RJ Barrett had 5 fouls. Like the Raptors got a lot from 7 guys, and the Cavs just had to reach elsewhere. And yeah, Merrill is just like that dude. Like if he just has it going, like we'll just let him keep rocking and rolling because there's a lot of sameness that you can run with him that you do with Max Strus that can get you similar results for your other guys. And if, like I said, Merrill has it going, it would be remiss of you not to play him. So who's your MVP pick if mine's Caris LeVert?
Mine's actually Isaac Okoro. I think Okoro just played really, really well in this game. I've noticed like as of late, he has really stepped up as the starting 3, technically speaking, with Strus at the 2 in this game, or just in general with Garland out. But Okoro is just really impactful for this one. Sure, he only went 0 of 4 from 3-point range, but the fact that he took them is great. I think the fact that he used his aggressiveness and physicality to the line 7 separate times, and he went 6 of 4 from the charity stripe is impactful too. 16 points, 3 assists, 2 steals, a block in this game. Like, sure, he had the lowest plus minus out of everyone on the floor at -18, but he also just was giving the Cavs a little bit of spark and a little bit of that edge and has just been stepping up as of late. And this was just a performance to me that really stood out.
He's got to make threes, I think, for me to get MVP consideration in this one. Just 0-4 from 3, including 2 just bad bricks is tough. All right, stat of the night for me. Cavs had an offensive rebounding rate of 17.9%. That is much, much lower than they've had in their wins of late. If you go, this doesn't explain everything, but if you look at the games they've won of late and look at the games they've lost, they have offensive rebounded well in the games they have won, and they have not in the games that they have lost. They pulled down 6 offensive rebounds, had that rate. Raptors had 10 offensive rebounds. It's not the whole thing again, but it's been an indicator lately is when the Cavs get second chance points, they get offensive rebounds, they win games. Didn't happen tonight. Evan, what's your stat?
Mine is the fact that the Raptors shot free throws, and this isn't going to be like one of those games where the refs are out to get the Cavs, or I'm going to say anything like that. It's just more so kind of indicative, I think, to me, of like that statistic you noted in the first segment, just how many points the Cavs gave up in the third quarter and how like defensively like, they haven't been great as of late, especially without Mobley out there. And I think just like a rare skill set that this Cavs team really possesses, especially when Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are sharing the floor together, or just one of them is playing individually, is they can defend really well in the interior without fouling, or just defend really well, period, without fouling. Like, sure, you might see Isaac Okoro a lot sometimes, but other than that, like the Cavs don't really seemingly give up a ton of opportunities at the charity stripe. And I mean, the fact that Toronto went 29 of 40 is insane to think that they had that many free points that they left at the free throw line. But more so the fact that like the Cavs just were giving up so many constant opportunities, and whether that was the fact that you saw Jared Allen in foul trouble this game with 4 fouls, or Donovan Mitchell with 4 fouls, or Max Strus with 4 fouls, or even Dean Wade is forced to play center at times and he had 2 fouls in this game, like, or even Tristan Thompson who had 3, or George Niang, who also got minutes at center, had 5. Like, the Raptors just put constant pressure on the rim at the Cavs, and the Cavs were forced to foul because they didn't want to give up an easy shot opportunity, and you saw 40 trips to the line. And I wonder if there's maybe a correlation there, just some of the defense we've seen.
What is your play of the night?
Play of the night for me is just like Sam Merrill hitting like close to a half court shot early into the second quarter. Like it was like in the bank of Scotiabank for the arena, but like that dude's got some range. And you know, I like to tease Jackson Flickinger. I know you do too, but he was always beating the Sam Merrill drum. But like, you asked it a very valid question. Like, should Merrill just play? And like moments like that, you say, yeah, he absolutely should just play for the Cavs because he gives them a valuable commodity, and he's such a low usage player. And like, he can hit those big shots that just really swing momentum back in your favor.
Yeah, the problem with Merrill is I think the moment you get him against a team with big wings, he's going to get hunted.
Oh,
and then
he's going to get hunted
it's
and roasted. That's the issue. It's like, it's a double-edged thing.
Yeah, I don't think that's a 16-game playoff guy. My place, it's the Sam Merrill thread. Just the quick trigger he has, the freedom he has to just shoot it is pretty remarkable that he did this late in the third quarter. He just catches it, lets it fly. There's no one else on this roster that is really, really capable of that. If you want to look at other ones, as far as just like not just only picking the Sam Merrill one, Karis LeVert, about 5:30 left in the quarter, gets through a trap, gets one-on-one in Siakam, dribbles, step back 3. Not the prettiest, I'm not going to tell you. It's like the encapsulation of modern basketball, but Karis LeVert making that 3, putting them up 1 at that time, pretty composed, pretty big. They need him to do that stuff, particularly while Garland's out, so we'll give LeVert some shine for that too. All right, coming up next, Knicks made a trade. We're not going to talk so much about the Mitchell part of it. We're going to do a whole episode on what Mitchell is right now, our next episode. But what does this mean for the standings in the East? What does it mean for the Cavs who are trying to remain in the top 6 of the East? Let's talk about it after this. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest DFS platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It is just you versus the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more or less than on 2 to 6 players, stat projections, and watch the winnings roll in. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. That is a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For instance, you go LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a combo of 10.5 3-pointers made and receptions. PrizePicks also allows you to play alongside some of their favorite players, including the rapper Meek Mill and the comedian Andrew Schultz. You can do that under the community tab. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA and use code LockedInNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA and code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $200. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. So, as far as this trade goes, OG Anunoby to the Knicks, Precious Achiuwa to the Knicks, Malachi Flynn to the Knicks. Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett to Toronto. I think with Toronto is not so much a factor in this to me, Evan, just because I think Siakam, it seems like, is going to be traded next. And then they're not particularly good as it is. They're 12th in the East right now. They did just beat the Cavs, who have fallen now to 8th in the standings live, but they're 12th. They're 13.5 games back. The Cavs are 8.5 back of first place. I'm going to run through the standings in the East, and then we can talk about where the Cavs fit in this and what this means for the competitiveness of it. Celtics are first, 26-6. Milwaukee, is 24-8. Philly is 22-10. Miami is 19-13. Orlando is 19-13. Indiana 17-14. Knicks 18-15. The Cavs 18-15. And then you drop down into, I think, another tier of teams, but that top 8 is really competitive. Obviously, top 6, only ones that don't have to go through the play-in tournament. Evan, when I look at this OG trade, it was already very clear to me that it was going to be hard for the Cavs to get fully into the top 6. I don't think it's a lock that they do based on what we've seen from them so far this year and how this is shaken out. I do think, as much as I don't know exactly how I feel about this trade for the Knicks, OG is another guy that's going to make it hard to match up against the Knicks. Will make the Knicks more competitive in some ways. I think there's a real tough sledding ahead here for the Cavs, who just find a way to break through to that top 6 and compete against teams like the Knicks, like the Pacers, like the Magic, like the Heat.
Yeah, so I might be higher on this trade than most people, but when you look at just what New York is getting compared to what they were getting from RJ Barrett, it's an upgrade in the sense that, sure, neither player between RJ Barrett or OG Anunoby can reliably dribble the basketball, drive to the basket, just as a primary ball handler. But if you're the Knicks, you have Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, others on this team that can provide you that. So it's not a huge pressing need at the small forward position. But for me, Anunoby is just a much better perimeter defender. I think his help defense is criminally underrated, and I am fascinated to see what Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks kind of get out of him as just a team that really is comfortable with grinding it out. And I think he just kind of fits that mold of a Thibodeau type player, but more so offensively. He just shoots and makes 3-pointers at a much higher clip than RJ Barrett ever did, and that is an upgrade for a team like New York that can have shooters across the roster. Sure, they don't have Mitchell Robinson, and they're leaning more on Isaiah Hartenstein going forward. But for a team like the Knicks that is nipping at the heels of Cleveland, who, as you said, had just fallen to 8th place after this loss to Toronto, and just look at the Cavs, who are kind of in this weird pool with the Heat, the Magic, the Pacers. I'd include New York in this mix as well too. Just trying to find a way to climb the summit and maybe either avoid either the Celtics and the Bucks in the playoffs and maybe sneak into the conference finals. This makes it harder for you. I think just Anunoby is a really good upgrade for New York, just in the sense of the 3-point shooting and just maybe what Tibbs can get out of him defensively and kind of what the Knicks can become defensively with Anunoby. I'm not saying he's a superstar, but it was a power move that was big enough for the Knicks to at least create a little bit more distance between just this weird mix of teams, whether it's Cleveland, Miami, Indiana, Orlando, just to kind of maybe separate themselves from the rest of the pack and just maybe make it a little bit easier for them breathing room wise as they kind of head into this second half of the season, as most teams are kind of getting close to that 40 game mark already.
I think it's just also just telling of where the Cavs are at. I think more than again, people who go check out Locked On Knicks if they want the Knicks analysis. You can go check all the other shows. But I think from the Cavs' point of view here, they entered this game 18-14. Okay, and then they're 18-15. 8.5 back of Boston, and now they're a game and a half behind Miami and Orlando. That does, on one hand, I look at that and say, this doesn't feel like a terrible place to be, considering how bizarre and odd and weird and I think underwhelming their season so far has been. Okay? They're also just not rating out nearly as good, and you can point out a ton of reasons why. People can do that. That's all valid. They're all valid. Context is valid. But they're 19th in net. They came into this game 19th in net rating, 22nd in offense, and 9th in defense. They have the profile of a team that will win 44.4 games right now. Last year, not that long ago, but last season, finished the regular season 2nd in net rating. Only Boston was better. 7th in offense and 1st in defense. That Cavs team had a profile of a 55-win team. This team just isn't as good as last year's version, it feels like. Again, Darius Garland has missed time. Evan Mobley has missed time. You've had these new pieces. I get it. But this just doesn't feel like as nearly rock solid of a group overall. And if I'm projecting this and saying, okay, should I feel confident as we start 2024 that they are going to make a push and I should feel good about them being a top 6 team? I would not. If I'm looking right now, if I had to say who I think, who it feels like the momentum would lead me to think is going to be the 7 and 8 and be in the play-in tournament, it might be Cleveland and Indiana. And I'm not saying that's a lock. You'll get Garland back. You'll get Mobley back. Other things will happen. But the Cavs have something to prove amid this group, and these other teams just have felt, to me, a little more rock solid this year. And the Knicks go get OG, and maybe there's another trade for them. I don't know. But the Cavs, I think, are fighting an uphill battle a little bit, and it's going to, at the very, very least, if they get there, it's going to be an absolute slog for them to get to like the 6th or the 5th seed and still have a very hard path to get higher in the playoffs.
I mean, Joe Flacco ain't walking through that door to save their season. So, yeah, like you said, context does matter when breaking this down, and the Cavs just kind of have come out flat. I do think injuries just constantly hitting them at the most inopportune times have more than played a part in it, but there's a lot of sameness in terms of just like what the eye test is telling you in terms of just like what they can produce offensively or just the lack of defense lately. And it just feels like the wind that they are trying to get in their sails just never fully blows them to shore, and they're just kind of drifting lost at sea right now. And sure, we can look at this on a game by game basis. But the fact there are only a handful of games over 500 at this point of the year, like that's disappointing if you're the Cavs, injuries or not. And I think there's a right to be frustrated if you're a fan, just considering like they do have Donovan Mitchell, they do have Jared Allen. Mitchell came off an All-NBA season last year. Allen is a All-Star caliber big man, and we've seen him step up quite a bit when the Cavs need him to. But they just can't seemingly struggle together consistency that play means impactful, tangible, impactful basketball. And sure, when they get Garland back, hopefully there's an update within the next 2 weeks, because we'd be hitting that sweet spot of like that 4-week initial window post-op for his jaw surgery. And then soon after you get back Evan Mobley, and the Cavs are able to put together a bit of a stretch run that gives Garland and Mobley the luxury and the grace to get healthy before like they have to really like lean on them heavier and heavier. But it's just been a little bit disappointing. I wonder what the general mood is inside that locker room. I don't think publicly you're ever going to hear like, oh, everything's falling apart. And I think that that's the right way to handle things. And I think it's impressive that they're able to kind of maintain that composure consistently. But yeah, like if you're the Cavs and you're trying to just find some consistency and maybe separate yourself from this group between Orlando, Indiana, New York, Miami, Philadelphia as well, who is like that weird team that's like on the precipice of things with Milwaukee and Boston too. But you have to just kind of throw up your hands and say, come on, man, if you're the Cavs, just because like what was already tough enough as is isn't going to get any easier, because New York got a piece that does make them better on paper, and I think will make them better with time as this trade just kind of, we get further and further away from this trade. And we'll see what Kobe Altman and company have up their sleeves. It's been widely reported at this point that like the Cavs are looking to move Ricky Rubio and find a way to just like something of value to put in that roster spot that's being occupied by Rubio not being here. And maybe they move on from Ty Jerome and Damian Jones, which were misses clearly just because Jerome hasn't played since the home opener against the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Well, I mean, he also got hurt. I know,
but like if you're a team like Cleveland, like you're trying your best to get him back on the court and let him be healthy, but also you can't afford sometimes to maybe wait all season for a guy who could be providing you just like a little bit more juice at times when you are missing key players at the top. And these are the trials and tribulations of top heavy teams like Cleveland that they have to deal with. And I am curious to see with, about a little bit over a month to go until the trade deadline, like what moves do the Cavs have up their sleeves to maybe kind of counterbalance what New York did. Now, obviously, like the Cavs are in a much different spot than the Knicks are in terms of assets, but I wonder if there's a move in Kobe Altman's sleeve that he can make just to kind of keep them in the race and maybe keep them out of that play-in tournament path that they seem to be heading on.
Last thing I'll say that is somewhat positive. If you're looking at really short-term optimism this week, you get the Wizards twice and you get the Spurs. Those are two of the absolute worst teams in the NBA. So if you're saying, hey, can we get it? Can we get home? Can we just be at home for a couple days before we go to Paris? Can we have some normalcy and play some bad teams and maybe build some good habits and get a chance to just be settled for a couple days? To me, there might be something to just, let's see what these couple things do. And to their credit, I think for overall, by and large, even in this loss, there is something gritty. There is something about the way they are playing to me that would give me some optimism internally about just where things could go if you get healthy. You can just get things to break right, but they do need things to break right, and they just need to win some games. And if you're saying, hey, end of the year, can we look back at a stretch where maybe things went right and we helped us get a top 6 seed in the East? I think beating the Wizards twice and then beating the Spurs would go a long way, even if you aren't at full strength. Those teams are not good. It's time to clean up and take care of some business, I think, for the Cleveland Cavaliers coming back home. All right, that's going to be it for today's Locked On Cavs. Back tomorrow, we're going to do a What is Donovan Mitchell in 2024 episode, his future, the latest reporting about the Cavs not being willing to trade him or entertain offers at this point. There's a lot to discuss with Mitchell, so we'll do that episode up next week, and then obviously more games to come all week long. I'm Chris Manning. That's been Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens as always. Check out Locked On Knicks. Check out Locked On Raptors. Check out Locked On NBA for more coverage of the OG Anunoby trade. Talk to y'all later this week.